When Harambe was just 2 years old, his mother, brother, and 2 half-siblings were all killed in a tragic accident. At a zoo in Texas, a tub of chlorine tablets was left too close to a heater, which filled their enclosure with toxic gas and poisoned them to death. Mississippi didn't make it illegal to sell a child until 2009, when a woman tried to sell her 2-week-old grandson on Craigslist for $2,000 in a car, but she couldn't be prosecuted because there wasn't currently a law to punish her under. DJ Khaled used to go by the name Arab Attack, but decided to change it after 9/11. In 1960, the CIA recruited one of Fidel Castro's mistresses to murder him with poison pills, but Castro found out. Castro then handed her his gun and dared her to shoot him, but she put the gun down. On 9/11, hospitals throughout New York City were bracing for maximum capacity, only to slowly realize that there were very few survivors of the collapse. Of the 3,000 people who were buried, only about 20 were pulled from the rubble. Since 1982, a team of researchers have been going deeper and deeper into the Veryovkina Cave, the deepest cave in the world. At 1,100 meters deep in 2021, they found the body of a climber dangling from a rope. A man spent months building a secret room in his home containing a homemade guillotine. He then lay down inside the guillotine, took sleeping pills, and set a timer for the blade to drop. His decapitated body was discovered by his father, who was completely unaware of his son's gruesome plan. Queen Elizabeth had 2 first cousins named Nerissa and Catherine Lyon who were severely disabled. Nerissa was publicly pronounced dead in 1940, while her sister Catherine was said to have died in 1961. But it was later revealed that they were actually tucked away in a mental asylum without any visits from the royal family until their actual deaths in 1986 and 2014. The U.S. military buys a prank fart spray called liquid ass to train and prepare medics for the stench of the battlefield. This is a 1969 photo of Roman Polanski kneeling next to the door where the word pig is written in his wife Sharon Tate's blood. While Polanski was working on a film in Europe, Tate was stabbed 16 times by members of the Manson family when she was 8.5 months pregnant. Polanski has said that the murders changed him forever and that not being there is his greatest life regret.
So yes, the Queen's first 2 cousins were born with disabilities, and later on they were committed to a mental asylum. They were publicly announced as deceased. The dark side of royal family.
In 1997, episode 38 of the Pokemon anime aired just one time before being pulled from TV forever. The episode featured a flashing strobe effect that sent nearly 700 children to the hospital due to dizziness, nausea, and seizures. The incident nearly single-handedly ruined the franchise, and the Pokemon Porygon was banned from ever appearing in an episode again. P.T. Barnum began his career as a showman after purchasing a blind slave woman named Joyce Heth. Barnum claimed she was over 160 years old and had been the nanny of George Washington. He exhibited her until her death in 1836 and even charged people 50 cents to watch her autopsy. Syrian archaeologist Khaled al-Assad dedicated his life to the excavation of the ancient city of Palmyra. In 2015, he was tortured and later beheaded by ISIS after refusing to give up the location of precious artifacts. This was the last photo taken of Marie Joseph before she drowned in the swimming pool shown. Due to the cloudy water, her body wasn't found for 2 days, during which time people continued swimming in the pool, unaware that Marie's body was decomposing beneath them. In 2011, scientists conducted an experiment to find out what's inside the average human belly button. One individual who hadn't bathed in years hosted 2 species of bacteria that are typically only found in ice caps and thermal vents. In the year 2000, an orca whale killed a great white shark off the coast of California. According to satellite tags, the smell of the dead shark's carcass apparently caused all nearby great whites to suddenly vanish. One shark that was in the region immediately dove down 500 meters and swam straight to Hawaii without stopping. Alan Lee Davis was convicted of 3 counts of murder after killing a pregnant woman and her 2 daughters in 1982. When he was executed in 1999, it took 3 runs of the electric chair to kill him. Due to the botched execution, he remains the last person to be executed by electric chair in the state of Florida. This 1985 photo was taken on board Japanese Airlines Flight 123 just minutes before the plane crashed into a mountainside. There were 520 fatalities, including everyone shown in this photo. In 2017, Las Vegas police arrested Shane Schindler, the prime suspect in the sledgehammer murders of 2 homeless men. Police set up a sting in which they disguised the mannequin as a homeless man and left it on the street. This is a photo of Schindler bashing the mannequin with a sledgehammer, thus proving he was the killer.
So yes, it actually took 3 runs to execute Alan Lee Davis on the electric chair, and after that case, there was a huge public outcry due to the intensity of the execution method. So later on, the primary execution method was changed from electric chair to lethal injection in Florida.
In 2001, Ashton Kutcher had a girlfriend who was murdered by a serial killer after being stabbed 35 times in her own home. Kutcher would end up testifying in the trial of the Hollywood Ripper, who would later confess to murdering at least 10 women over a 15-year span. Author of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley, lost her virginity on top of her mother's grave. She also kept her dead husband's heart and carried it around for 30 years until her own death. According to the FBI, if you're murdered in the United States, there's only about a 40% chance that your killer will be found and punished. In 2009, a Russian man went to the doctors suspecting that there was something wrong with his lungs. Initially, doctors thought they were dealing with a tumor, but it ended up being something they'd never seen before. It turned out that years ago, the man accidentally inhaled the seed of a fir tree and it started growing inside of him. In 2013, 16-year-old Ethan Couch killed 4 people while drunk driving. But he initially wasn't sentenced to any jail time since his attorney argued that he suffered from affluenza, a mental illness caused by growing up with too much money. In ancient Sparta, only 2 groups of people could have their names inscribed on their tombstones: men who died in battle and women who died in childbirth. In 1994, Los Angeles police arrested a man dressed as the Grim Reaper carrying a scythe. He was reported by various nursing homes after staring through patients' windows while wearing the costume. In the year 2000, the charred remains of Mary Lou Morris were found in her burned-out car in Houston, Texas. Only 4 days later, the body of Mary McGinnis Morris was found in her burned-out car in Houston, Texas. Police believe that a hitman killed the wrong Mary Morris and tried to fix it.
So the actual target was Mary McGinnis Morris, but Mary Lou Morris was killed by mistake, and they both were killed 2 days apart, and to this day, the case is still unsolved.
Ever since they were little kids, twins June and Jennifer Gibbons refused to speak to anyone other than each other. By the time they turned 18, they'd committed multiple criminal offenses and were sent to a high-security mental hospital in 1981. Years prior, they made a long-standing agreement that if one of them ever died, the other must begin to speak and attempt to live a normal life. While at the mental hospital, they decided it was now necessary for one of them to die, and Jennifer agreed to make the sacrifice. In March of 1993, Jennifer was rushed to the hospital where she died of a sudden inflammation of the heart. There was no evidence of drugs or poisoning in her system. It was as if she'd just died out of nowhere. Afterwards, June said she was finally liberated from her sister and was eventually released from the asylum. She now talks to people and has lived a relatively normal life ever since. 2010, Ozzy Osbourne had his genome sequenced to understand how it was possible for him to still be alive after abusing his body for so many years. Researchers found mutations related to addiction, metabolism, and Ozzy's Neanderthal ancestors. In fact, he carries several 100,000 genetic variants that have never been seen before by scientists. Meaning if he wasn't a literal mutant, he likely would have died decades ago. There have been at least 9 different studies on the DARE program, and all of them agree that it either does nothing or only worsens the problem. Gary Webb was an investigative journalist who was one of the first to report on the CIA's involvement in the cocaine trade. A few years later in 2004, Gary was found dead in his home with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. His death was officially ruled a...
So Gary Webb exposed how the CIA was into the cocaine business, for which he faced a severe backlash. But later on, it was confirmed how the CIA was deeply rooted in the cocaine business.
If your skin ever starts turning yellow like the photo on the left, you should see a doctor as soon as possible. This man had a condition called jaundice, which can indicate serious problems with the liver. These photos were taken before and after the man received a liver transplant. Before the murder of Shinzo Abe, the most recent political assassination in Japan happened in 1960. Leader of the Socialist Party, Inajiro Asanuma, was attacked by a 17-year-old wielding a sword. The brutal murder was captured live on television and broadcasted to millions across Japan. A group of researchers in Africa once hit a speaker near a herd of elephants and played a recording of one of their herd members who had died. The dead elephant's family suddenly went wild calling for him, and his daughter cried out for days afterward. The The researchers later vowed to never conduct such an inhumane experiment again. This photo shows the Undertaker looking down at medical staff after chokeslamming Mick Foley through the roof of Hell in a Cell. The fall was completely unplanned and left Foley with multiple dislocations, bruised ribs, and internal bleeding. The Undertaker was certain he'd just killed the man, but Foley got up and even finished the match. The band Fleetwood Mac highly considered thanking their drug dealer in the credits of their most popular album, Rumors. They only decided against it after their dealer was murdered. In 2010, a commercial plane crash in Africa killed everyone on board except for one passenger, who was left with an insane story to tell his rescuers. Apparently, a man smuggled a crocodile on board, which managed to escape shortly before landing. This made everyone panic and run to one side of the plane at one time, causing it to flip and eventually crash. This devastating photo was taken in India during the Madras famine of 1877. The man is fighting the urge to sleep so that he could protect his family against cannibals. People were so desperate for food that your own neighbor could snatch up your child to eat them at any given time. In 2010, Dave Grohl was admitted to the hospital due to an overdose. He apparently consumed too much caffeine from coffee and thought he was about to die after experiencing severe chest pains. Also in 2010, a homeless man named Hugo saved a woman from a knife attack in New York City. He was stabbed while trying to help, but continued chasing the attacker before collapsing to his wounds. Security cams captured more than 20 people walking past and staring at him, but no one offered to help. He was found dead on the sidewalk more than an hour after the attack. Stricken with polio in 1952, Paul Alexander has been living in an iron lung for 70 years. He may be the only person left in one, since modern technology has created far more practical methods for respiration. But if Paul leaves this machine for even a few minutes, he will stop breathing and almost certainly die. 6 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the sunken battleship USS West Virginia was finally salvaged from the ocean floor. On that ship, a calendar was found inside of an airtight room where 3 sailors had marked off 16 days until they died. In 2013, a French man on a business trip died of a heart attack while having sex with a stranger. A French court later ruled that it was a workplace accident and that his wife and family were entitled to compensation. Many say he did it for his family. In 2018, 17-year-old Jordan Turpin called 911 to report that she and her 12 siblings were being abused by their parents. This is sadly rather common, but what police discovered in the Turpin household was far more horrific than anything they'd seen before. The entire house reeked of human excrement, decaying garbage, and dead pets that were scattered throughout the home. Many of the 12 children had been tied to their beds and were covered in bruises and dirt. It was clear that David and Louise Turpin had been torturing their children for years, allowing them to eat just once per day and shower just once per year. They would reportedly often leave food on the table and force their children to stare at it before throwing it away in the trash. This resulted in extreme malnourishment, as their oldest son was 29 years old but weighed just 82 pounds at the time of their rescue. The kids were so clearly abused that a few doctors broke down in tears upon seeing them for the first time. The Turpin parents were handed 12 counts of torture among numerous other charges and were effectively sentenced to life in prison.